Hi and welcome to a weekly review or outlook on the markets. I'm going to start off looking at the fundamentals as I did last week here. I'm just going to use the Forex Factory statement here and what we got leading into this week then. So we've recently just got the time back into sync on the US, Canadian markets and North American markets back in sync now. So what we've got this week, well, there's the Eurogroup meetings that started today. We've got the finance meetings running through Tuesday. From those meetings, we can get speakers that can create volatility within the markets and get the markets, as I say, somewhat excited. But aside of that, following last week's non-farms, we had lots of data out last week. This week's a relatively quiet week. Still got two central banks. We've got the Reserve Bank of Australia sitting there at 3:30 on Tuesday, and we've got the New Zealand. Have we not got the New Zealand Central Bank out there somewhere? I thought. Perhaps not then. I've not got it highlighted on here. I may not have it in my search. So let me just unfilter and put the New Zealand Bank in. I'm sure that's in there as well. So there it is. It's there somewhere. Later in the week. There we go. So I knew we had two. Reserve Bank of New Zealand on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. So a couple of central bank statements still to come. Interest rates are not expected, or base rates are not expected to be adjusted by either. It's more the comments that come from those meetings within the statements and any press conference afterwards, which may cause some volatility. So that's the Aussie and New Zealand dollar, which we may see some volatility caused on there. So aside of that, then it really becomes quite a week. We've got manufacturing production. That's the on Friday, last of the sort of PMI type results coming out there really, which sometimes can move the markets by about 20 pips or so. So expect some volatility around there. Of course, it's Black Friday coming up, I believe, this week, isn't that right? So on Veterans Day, often. So I would imagine there will be some Veterans Day there. So I would imagine there'll be some quietness on Friday afternoon happening. So there we go. Not a lot coming this week. So let's just look at the technicals then. The euro dollar, well, we ended up on Friday on this bearish engulfing. I was looking to see if we still may see a push up. We've got the weekly pivot just above us, so we may still see the euro run towards that weekly pivot. But bigger pictures just come out to the weekly picture itself as opposed to the daily picture. And you can see it's still, to me, it's the price is closed still below that weekly 21, and I still err towards the bearish side. Now, last week it took all week to get sort of more bearish, but this, to me, I guess to say, unless we see some sort of major change in things here, it looks like it could sort of trip over towards the 34 weekly 34 moving average even. We'll see how that rolls out, but for now, as I say, it looks weak. It's a bit slow this morning, which we could end up with a slow week ahead, but we do have some European meetings going on, so may create occasional volatility. The great unknown. Okay, let's have a look at the pound. Again, let's just come out and look at the weekly picture first. And well, it was sitting last week pretty much on that weekly 21, and it's still sitting on the weekly 21. I put a trend line across the prior lows there on this channel. And well, it's taken a bounce off that sort of level this morning at the moment. It's got the potential for some more upside. It's certainly from a daily point of view, I quite like these regression channels. Often price will come back towards the sort of center point, the regression level itself. A bit more continuation may be needed, of course, of this move, but it has the potential yet still to push up. It got overdone perhaps on the sell-off last week, selling on the news there. It was almost unexpected as a pop and a drop, and it certainly dropped, but probably dropped a little bit more than some had expected with some of the dovish comments made. But all in all, there's a lot of dovish comments going around a lot of these markets here, and we may yet see the pound recover a bit more. So it certainly looks on the cards at the moment. Dollar yen. Just look at where we are now. So this morning we ran into, eventually got back to the absolute highs from earlier this year, and it's gone properly into the trend line, which I drew probably on Friday actually, but it's gone properly into that. At the moment, it looks like it's rolling over. Well, it certainly is rolling over a little bit at where we're seeing at the moment. There's a very weak divergence on the RSI. Actually, MACD may have sort of put in a clearer divergence, maybe sitting between these the previous highs. Looks like there's a shade of divergence. Certainly, price went higher and the MACD didn't. So we could see a bigger correction here, maybe on that factor, and a move further south towards the monthly pivot. It may be big after the monthly pivot, but we've still got the weekly pivot untouched where the daily 8 comes, and that is what I'm looking at the moment. Okay, Aussie dollar. Now, as I said, the central bank meeting for the Aussie on Tuesday. At the moment, I think it's looking weak again. It's sitting there hugging the weekly 50. A little bounce this morning coming back off of that. It's got this sort of daily pivot swing in for all intents and purposes. To me, it's pretty much like the euro and looks relatively bearish, but depends what it's going to do this morning. I still believe it's got the potential further downside, even if it's in this sort of short-termism. We're sort of down to the monthly S1 and that 500 daily 500 that sits below us, but it does look weak. But I'm sure that will be decided, or its fate will be decided a lot more tomorrow morning. Okay, Canadian dollar. So Canadian dollar, it had been shoving up pretty well last week. Well, it's put in this almost a shooting star candle sitting there, not quite closed back within the bands there, but not far off it. An element of weakness sort of sitting there at the moment. Bigger picture, just looking at the price action and nothing else here. You're probably looking at a sort of a bear flag sort of pattern going in there. So, well, it didn't quite get up into some key resistance in terms of the bigger time moving averages here. But got the potential, I guess, to sell off some more. It's currently sitting on its monthly pivot here, not quite run into the weekly pivot yet, which is slightly above, but maybe a rollover here, potential back towards the daily 21s, maybe more. It's not very far back to 21 at the moment. We've seen quite a bit more consolidation of late in some of these intraday movements. The volatility's gone out of quite a few of the markets, the Canadian dollar being no exception. So there is the potential for that to come off some more, as I said. Just really want to be breaking below this monthly pivot for maybe more of a correction. However, of course, analysts out there will say, well, okay, it's just a bull flag, and yes, it has got that potential to bounce more off this monthly pivot. So that's certainly got there is a possibility there, but let's just see how it runs. I mean, the pivotal point, of course, is that monthly pivot, ironically. If it starts selling off below that, well, I've got to be a bit more bearish on it. If it does start bouncing, maybe breaking a short-term trend line, it may sort of suggest that, well, it's running back towards that daily 200. Probably a little less clear than some of the other markets look at the moment, but we've got some time just to see how that runs. As I say, below the monthly pivot, it becomes more bearish to me, even though we may just find support almost straight away into that 21. But if it starts breaking the trend on the shorter time frames there, it may be giving us a signal that it's going to run back towards the 200. Okay, that's pretty much it for me. I will, as I mentioned, the New Zealand dollar in dispatches. It's not something I trade personally, but I will pop it up there and we'll have a quick look at the situation with the New Zealand dollar. It's been selling off quite strongly over the last few weeks. Last week has really seen almost a bullish Harami sort of pattern there. Bit of spinning top, reversal sort of bar. Got the possibilities of coming in from a daily perspective. Well, there's still, well, as I say, just it's putting a sort of bear flag in. Really, it may yet come up towards that monthly pivot, but Wednesday morning we'll really sort the New Zealand dollar out in terms of interest rate decision, so it's probably best waited to see what happens there. But any sort of buying into that pivot thereafter may offer further sell-off points. Okay, that's it for me. Have a great week. Bye for now.